we've got that out of the way. We can talk about other things now. So, when I was asked if I could sort of come and speak to you guys, they said, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, I don't know, there's lots of things I could talk about. Probably not all of them that relevant to the audience in the room, just about life in general and living around the world. But we thought we'd talk a little bit about the lost art of strategy. Now, this is a perspective, it's a point of view, it's my opinion. I'm very happy for you all to challenge me and talk to me about this afterwards, or some questions at the end. But I do kind of worry that because we're so excited by the age in which we live, the sort of super hyper-connected age, where technology is facilitating, at scale, the ability to build relationships around the world, the ability to create even more and more data points and collect more and more data points, that we kind of got lost maybe in the weeds a little bit, right? And we've kind of forgotten maybe what strategy is really about. And I had a junior strategist come to me, been working with us for a little while, come from another agency, content agency. To me, I find it really hard to write strategy documents because in my last agency, we changed the strategy every 2 weeks. I suppose it's not really a strategy then. I think, and again, I think there's some confusion around sometimes what strategy is, what planning is, what those different disciplines are, and what that sort of optimization is as well. But before I kind of bore everyone to sleep after lunch, I'm sure you've all had heavy lunches and probably drift off. I won't hold it against you. I myself might fall asleep on stage. I just got off a flight from Madrid and came straight here, so hopefully I'll stay awake long enough to keep talking to you, but feel free to sort of shout at me if I start looking like I'm nodding off. 2019, what a time to be alive, right? Isn't it amazing? We've got the best things in the world, like Girl Filter, right? This is an awesome phenomenon, right? Unfortunately, it can have unintended consequences, like for Lane, where her boyfriend looks like a mum when he does it, which is perhaps a little bit freaky, a little bit worrying for people. We can have food delivered to us at pretty much any time of the day or night. We also have the ability to watch as much content as we want from Netflix and Amazon Prime and others, right? We can just consume it where we want. I find it super useful. I get bounced around the world a lot in my role, and I love the fact that there's a consistent set of services that I can access that help me out wherever I happen to be in the world, right? So, another great reason. We're living in this era where we do, big data, however you want to frame it up. And the technology that we're now starting to see being applied around the world is smarter than pretty much everyone in the world combined, right? And when you think about it, we're not even necessarily aware of how much algorithms are influencing us each and every day, right? So if I am using Netflix, it's interesting, I don't know if anyone saw, so BBC iPlayer made an announcement a couple of weeks ago now, where they were talking about the future of curation for iPlayer is human. They've actually got real people sitting behind picking the content that they think is interesting, and it's being sort of human curated. And I got into a discussion with our global head of digital strategy, a guy called Rob Collins from New York, just recently, a few days ago. We were talking about the fact that it's almost as though we're going to get to a point where with all this technology, with all of this sort of access to information and being able to sort of, access things from wherever we are in the world, does actually the differentiating factor for brands become bringing the human back into the experience, right? Rather than it necessarily always being about the technology and the algorithms that kind of fueling behavior, because algorithms can have biases built into them, right? We all know that. They can have gender biases in them, they can have racial biases built into them as well, unintentionally, but it's what kind of happens in these self-perpetuating sort of models, especially when it's dependent on a particular data set. And what's kind of, again, interesting is that we're being programmed more and more in real life too. So it's not just about sort of the algorithms that sit in our digital lives, but it is also about things like Amazon Go, right? So the fact you can go around there, that's a whole store that's built to create data points for Amazon to better understand user behavior in the same way that they have through their online store, right? So we're in this world where everything's being sort of brought to us, everything's available to us, technology is making decisions for us. And I think, for me, that's where we're starting to sort of decouple from strategy, because ultimately these are technology, they're tools that are useful, that help us in our day-to-day lives. But technology itself isn't the strategy, right? Technology for me is always about what does it enable? And that means you've got to have a clear vision, you've got to have a clear kind of understanding of what you're trying to get to before you kind of bring technology into play. And we're seeing as well, so this is sort of a reference to Cambridge Analytica, but persuasion and even within MarTech stacks, right? It's becoming a science. We're able to collect so much information, we can predict the right kind of purchase intent, we can actually profile how likely someone is to convert to a certain point, and you can completely automate a campaign. So there's a lot of automation, there's a lot of optimization. People will come to me and say, Johnny, we've got this great technology strategy, we're going to just implement Adobe or Cycle or whatever it might be, and that's our strategy for the year. I'm like, well, again, for me, that's not really a strategy, right? And my boss always talks about, don't come to me and tell me what your digital strategy is, tell me what your strategy is for a connected age, right? Because it's kind of a given that we live in a world that's full of technology, and that technology and the pace of change is accelerating, right? But that doesn't negate the need to have an actual defined kind of vision, where we're going to, what those clear objectives are, all the things that ultimately strategy is about. Because it is incredibly clever what we can do, it is incredibly smart what we can do, and we can optimize to the 10 trillionth degree to make sure that we're closing that sale, or we're able to sort of influence that decision at a key moment in time. But, companies have grown, appeared, technology has sort of facilitated so much, it's obviously a real opportunity. But ultimately, it is an enabler. So that was my intro, my setup, I guess, which is just to say, the world is a beautiful, wonderful place. Technology is helping us in so many ways day to day in our lives. It's helping us as marketeers to be even smarter about the things that we do and the choices and decisions that we make. And it's speeding things up. In a real-time world, you need to be able to move at the speed at which someone is actively Instagramming, tweeting, updating, right? But then we have to remember that that's not the strategy in and of itself. And I actually had a brief from a client recently. They said, Johnny, I want a strategy to develop my strategy. I kid you not, right? And I sat there, and it took me about 30 seconds for my brain to kind of work out exactly what they'd said. I said, are you sure you want a strategy to develop your strategy? Yeah, I want a strategy to develop my strategy. Okay, and they actually had, I think, 6 agencies bid for this. And what I did was I said, well, here's a process to develop your strategy. And they said, that's not a strategy. I said, no, it's a process. And we didn't win, right? And I'm okay with that, because I don't know what happened after that, but it seemed to take 12 months for them to develop the strategy for the strategy, that by the time they developed the strategy for the strategy, it was too late, right? So I think we get a little bit too hung up, right? Bid optimization strategy, we've got so many different sort of forms of strategy. And I think a lot of that is also down to the fact that we get very hung up by vanity metrics, right? Don't these images all look pretty similar? Right? Why do we think that is, people of the room? Shout it out, tell me. No? Because the data analyst did it. That's Jonathan, who spoke to you earlier, who's our head of data and analytics. The problem here is, and I had the same, I worked on the Emirates social media business a few years ago when they first kind of launched. And we found that ultimately if you're showing up pictures of what we then sort of dubbed plain porn, surprisingly enough it gets a lot of likes and comments and shares. So therefore, community managers do more and more and more, and suddenly everyone in the aviation industry is pretty much doing the same thing, right? Hey look, can you guess what plane this is? hey look, do you know where we're taking off from? Right? If you go and look at the feeds of a lot of the aviation companies, you'll see what I mean. But because you're looking at the immediate engagement rates, right? Of course it drives this kind of behavior, then you end up with a bunch of brands that are all posting, apparently, when you were going for sort of liquor, or certainly for cognac and Hennessy and things like that, a shot of a glass and the bottle is what performs the best from a social metrics perspective, right? But that's kind of missing the point of why we're doing it in the first place. What actual objective are we trying to achieve? And it's really important that we do think about what are the metrics that truly matter, the ones that are driving back towards the goal, and are we even building the right audience, right? For Emirates, I remember we did some analysis on the Facebook page that we'd been running for them, and we realised that most of the people that were following Emirates were either A, sort of local Emirati, who were just very passionate about the fact that it was a UAE airline, and they liked to champion it and talk about it, which is fine and good. A bunch of cabin crew, pilots, staff. There were very little engagement people that probably would be classed as the audiences that we were trying to get to, right? Because we were building an audience and it wasn't necessarily the right one. So a little piece of information for those that don't know, the term strategy is an old Greek term. It's actually two words. The best translation, I think, for it is sort of generalship, but it's a military term, right? It comes from leading in a time of war, right? So this is Genghis Khan, for those that didn't instantly recognise him from his statue. Probably one of the greatest military leaders of all time. When I was a kid growing up in the UK, we always used to talk about Alexander the Great. Genghis Khan actually conquered more of the world than Alexander the Great did. Pretty successful. But he had a really clear vision, and he was very also crystal clear about what he was good at and what he wasn't so good at. Right? So he knew he had not the biggest army in the world, but he had the Mongolian horse. Right? Mongolian horse is fantastic. If you never had a chance, go and ride a Mongolian horse. I thoroughly recommend it. And he was able to have these highly mobile armies that would go in, raid a particular town or city, and then he realized that he couldn't necessarily afford to leave a garrison there, right? So what he would do is he'd barter a deal with the leader of that city that that person would then still get to run their city, run their kingdom. They would pay him some taxes, and he would leave them alone. Right, but if they didn't pay the taxes, he'd come back on his Mongolian horse and he'd, cause some death and destruction. So he was smart, right? He was thinking strategically about what he could do and what he couldn't do, and actually what he could achieve against his vision. And his vision was to sort of rule every land that he could see under the blue sky, right? You if you look at sort of modern day leaders and that sort of same clarity of vision, I think, you look at someone like Steve Jobs, right? Obviously now no longer with us, sadly, but he had a really strong point of view and perspective around what he wanted Apple to be, right? Rightly or wrongly, caused some consternation, got fired from the job, famously, of course, came back and turned the business around. But he did have a very clear vision, he had a very clear view of what he wanted Apple to be and what he didn't want it to be, most importantly. I had a conversation with a client, and I won't name them because they'll get upset with me, where they said, I've got 33 strategic initiatives to fulfill this year. And I said, what do you mean 33 strategic initiatives? They can't all be strategic initiatives, you've got 33 of them. You've got one sort of strategy, and then you have the different kind of work streams and different initiatives that you play out against that. But how the hell do you, as a leader of a business, actually run against 33 strategic initiatives in that kind of short space of time, right? So Grant is the person I believe has a really clear kind of take and view. He wrote modern or contemporary strategy analysis, which is kind of the go-to text for most MBA courses around the world, right? And he just said, ultimately strategy comes down to what are you trying to get to, and therefore what are the patterns that you're making in sort of resource provision behind that, right? And ultimately, that's what it boils down to. It's, you know, this is where we want to go. These are the chunks of activity that we need to place the big bets against to get there. And someone forgot to turn their phone off.